May 1945. Germany's cities are destroyed. Standing in the broken buildings are millions of teenagers who were once called the future of their country. They wore uniforms, carried guns, and promised loyalty to Hitler. Now the war is over, and they face an empty world. What happened to them after everything fell apart? From belief to war when Adolf Hitler became the leader in January 1933. The Hitler Youth was still a small group. It started in 1926 and had fewer than 100,000 members. Within 10 years, almost every boy and girl in Nazi Germany would join. Under the leader Baldur von Schirach, who started leading in 1931, the group grew fast. The Nazis believed young people were the building blocks of their future country, and Schirach's job was to shape them the way Hitler wanted. In December 1936, a new law made, joining the Hitler Youth. Duty for all Aryan boys and girls between ages 10 and 18. 3 years later, in March 1939, another law made joining required by law. Every child had to be trained physically, politically, and mentally to serve the country. The Hitler Youth was divided by age and gender. Boys aged 10 to 14 joined the Deutsches Jungvolk, where they learned basic training, camping, and songs about their nation. At 14, they moved up to the Hitler Jugend, which focused on endurance, shooting, and following orders. Girls entered the Bund Deutscher Mägde, League of German Girls, which focused on housework, nursing, and physical fitness. Together, these groups turned growing up into serving the state. The weekly meetings, marches, and weekend camps mixed childhood with military-style loyalty. When war started on September 1st, 1939, the Hitler Youth changed from preparing to actually participating. Teenagers worked as air raid messengers, fire watchers, and helpers at anti-aircraft guns. By 1943, as Germany lost more soldiers, older boys trained in special units that fed directly into the army. Many 17-year-olds saw combat on the Eastern Front or in defense batteries protecting German cities. In 1944, as enemy armies moved closer, Hitler called on his youngest followers again. Thousands were drafted into the Volkssturm, Germany's last-chance army. Some units fought hard, like the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitler Jugend, formed mostly of volunteers born in 1926 at Normandy. They became known for extreme discipline, but suffered terrible losses. Others defended Berlin itself in April 1945, armed with anti-tank weapons and courage fueled by propaganda. By the time the country fell, the Hitler Youth had lost its purpose and its innocence. Millions of members were displaced, lost their parents, or were deeply hurt emotionally. Their leaders ran away or were captured. Schirach was arrested in 1945 and later put on trial at Nuremberg. Arthur Axmann, who took over in 1940, went into hiding until his capture the next year. Historians still disagree about whether these young followers should be blamed. Some point to force after 1939 membership was required. Others see the results of years of training and belief. What is certain is that by war's end, Germany's so-called future generation stood among its greatest victims. Children turned into soldiers, left to rebuild a broken world, ending the group and changing minds when Germany surrendered in May 1945. The Hitler Youth disappeared almost overnight. Its flags, uniforms, and symbols were quickly buried or burned. The Allied powers, shocked by how deeply German children had been taught these ideas, moved quickly to destroy every trace of the organization. On October 10, 1945, the Allied Control Council officially banned the Hitler Youth, calling it a key part of the Nazi state. Its property was taken, and all activities were stopped. The Allies recognized a unique challenge. Millions of young Germans shaped by years of total government, control, and propaganda. In the Western zones, the approach was mainly educational. Allied military government orders closed all Nazi-connected youth groups and encouraged the creation of new ones under church or community control. The goal was to re-educate through democracy and community responsibility, not punishment. Teachers, pastors, and American and British youth officers organized summer camps and discussion groups meant to replace marching songs with open debate. Yet after the war, aviation looked very different across occupied Germany. In the Soviet-controlled zone, it took on a clearly ideological form. The Freie Deutsche Jugend (FDJ), founded in 1946, became the only state-approved youth organization, absorbing thousands of former Hitler Youth members. Communist teaching replaced Nazi belief, but the structure, uniforms, discipline, and devotion to the state remained familiar. In later years, East German leaders said fascism was a Western sickness, while the FDJ offered its own brand of socialist loyalty. For some, it provided belonging and a sense of redemption. For others, it simply demanded obedience under a new flag. For adult leaders, the reckoning came in courtrooms. At the Nuremberg trials, Baldur von Schirach, who had led the Hitler Youth from 1931 to 1940, was charged with crimes against humanity for his role in spreading Nazi ideas and deporting Jews from Vienna. In October 1946, he received a 20-year prison sentence. His successor, Arthur Axmann, captured in December 1945, was tried later by a German court. In May 1949, he was sentenced to 3 years and 3 months for membership in a criminal organization, but was released soon after, claiming to have broken with Nazism. For the ordinary members, an estimated 8 million at the war's end, the process was less clear. Questionnaires asked about their Hitler Youth activities, though most were classified as followers rather than active offenders. Many were still teenagers or war orphans. Western authorities soon realized that punishing an entire generation was impossible and unhelpful. Instead, they focused on schooling, psychological counseling, and removing Nazi symbols from public life. In 1949, when the Federal Republic of Germany was founded, the issue of guilt among former Hitler Youth largely faded from public debate. Yet beneath the surface, the trauma remained. Many former members spoke of confusion, raised to worship. A leader who had vanished, forced to face the lies they had believed. The Hitler Youth had been ended, but its influence lingered in the minds of millions learning, for the first time, what freedom and responsibility really meant, rejoining society. Memory and guilt. By the early 1950s, Germany was rebuilding, and so were the millions of young men and women who had once worn the Hitler Youth uniform. In both East and West, these former members faced the same question: how to live with a past they had been taught to worship, and a future that demanded they forget. In West Germany, the Allied occupation gave way to Reconstruction and the rise of the Federal Republic in 1949. Economic revival created new jobs, homes, and families. Former Hitler Youth members, most now in their 20s or 30s, blended into this recovery. Since membership became required in 1939, few carried a lasting mark of shame. Teachers, officials, even lawmakers of the new republic often shared the same youth training. Historians have noted that the Hitler Youth generation, born roughly between 1922 and 1930, became the backbone of after-war society, disciplined, practical, but often emotionally detached. Public discussion was almost non-existent. The 1950s and 1960s became years of deliberate forgetting. Many Germans saw themselves primarily as victims of war and displacement rather than as participants in Nazism. In schools, the topic was avoided or treated abstractly. Former members rarely spoke about their experiences, some out of shame, others from a belief that what they had done as children was beyond their control. Only in rare autobiographies, such as those by journalist Alphonse Heck or historian Melita Mashman, did the voices of the Hitler Youth generation begin to surface. During the 1960s and 1970s, as a new generation came of age, the silence began to crack. Students questioned their parents' wartime roles, demanding answers about involvement and moral responsibility. Former Hitler Youth members now in their 40s found themselves confronted by their children in living rooms and classrooms alike. Memoirs, documentaries, and early historical studies emerged, exploring how deeply Nazi teaching had shaped their worldview. Psychologists later observed a shared emotional pattern denial, mixed with guilt and nostalgia shadowed by unease. Some Former Hitler Youth members admitted to moments of pride in the friendship and adventure of their youth, followed by lifelong guilt for what that loyalty had served. The contradictions defined their generation, devoted as children, disillusioned as adults. By the 1980s, historians and filmmakers finally began to show the Hitler Youth not just as bad people or victims, but as a lost generation caught in history's machinery. The debates shifted from blame to understanding. How could a society so thoroughly capture the minds of its children, and what lessons did that hold for the modern world? Long-term legacy and lessons for today. By the late 20th century, the story of the Hitler Youth had become a symbol, not just of Nazism, but of how entire generations can be shaped by belief systems. What began as a youth organization ended as one of the most enduring warnings of the modern age. In post-war Germany, official memory evolved slowly. The first West German studies on the Hitler Youth appeared in the 1960s, but only in the 1980s and 90s did schools begin teaching the subject in depth. The children of former members pushed for transparency, demanding to know what their parents had done. Universities hosted conferences on the Hitler Youth generation, exploring how early teaching affected democratic values in adulthood. Many former members participated in interviews describing how guilt, silence, and discipline carried over into their post-war lives. Their testimonies revealed the human cost of collective manipulation. After reunification in 1990, historians began comparing both systems. Some noted striking similarities: uniforms, slogans, and state loyalty repackaged for a new system of beliefs. That comparison revealed how every controlling regime, whatever its beliefs, depends on shaping the young to secure its survival. Today, the Hitler Youth remains legally banned in Germany, and its symbols are not allowed under 86 of the German Criminal Code. Yet its imagery continues in museums, films, and academic debate. Scholars still argue whether its psychological legacy faded after the 1970s or continued to influence post-war attitudes toward authority, conformity, and civic duty. The truth, as so often in history, lies somewhere between collective forgetting and quiet remembrance. Internationally, educators use the Hitler Youth as a case study in how propaganda targets identity and belonging. Exhibits at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and the Documentation Center in Nuremberg explore how peer pressure, reward systems, and ritual transformed growing up into obedience. For many visitors, the most unsettling question is not why the Hitler Youth existed, but how easily it could exist again. In the end, their story was not just about an organization's collapse, but about an entire generation's transformation. Their past shows that teaching people what to think does not end with defeat. The uniforms are gone, but the lesson remains. When a generation is taught to obey rather than think, rebuilding begins not with new laws, but with the courage to question. If you found this video insightful, watch what happened to the Gestapo. After WW2 next, look at how another pillar of Nazi power faced its reckoning. Thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell for more.